This episode provides a thoughtful framework for how parents can navigate common questions and conversations with their children about sex, bodies, and relationships. Here are some key principles. 1. Be prepared. Parents can mentally prepare for these conversations ahead of time, anticipating common questions kids may ask. 2. Keep it simple. The goal is to provide concise, age-appropriate answers. No need for lengthy explanations or lectures. 3. Celebrate curiosity. Approach these discussions with positivity, celebrating the child's desire to learn and understand. 4. Avoid judgment. Refrain from moralizing or using these conversations as to prevent certain behaviors. Focus on education, not prevention. 5. Embrace learning together. If you don't have all the answers, involve the child in researching and discovering the information together. 6. Emphasize relationship. Highlight the loving, intimate context of topics like sex and reproduction rather than just the mechanics. We walk through sample questions kids often ask, modeling how parents can apply these principles to have open, constructive dialogues. The aim is to foster healthy perspectives and ongoing communication around sexuality and development.
Welcome to Fostering Godlike Sexuality at Home. Our goal here is to empower parents to teach their children to see sex in a godlike way.
My name is Brigham Elton. I'm a pornography and sexual addiction counselor who've helped thousands of people overcome even the appeal of pornography. And I'm hoping to get out in front of this and try to help parents to set up their homes to chase godlike sexuality from the beginning.
My name's Andrea, a mother of 4, and I'm learning alongside all you listeners and excited to have these discussions. Thanks for joining us.
I think sometimes parents are kind of blindsided by a kid's question, right?
Right.
Or like all of a sudden, here's your kid, and your kid is asking a question like, how does the baby get out? Or why was your door locked? Or mom, what's sex? Or why does my penis get hard? Or like any of these questions that sometimes can kind of blindside a parent. And then honestly, I think that sometimes a parent in their head goes to this like, why are you asking that? And it becomes this kind of freak out moment, right?
Or I think maybe parents, sometimes they anticipate that these questions are going to come and it becomes big and big and big in their head.
Yeah.
And then when that moment comes, it feels big to the parent, and to the kid, it was just a simple question.
Yeah, right. And I think we can do a lot as parents to kind of mentally prepare for these moments, right?
Yeah.
And so today, I think it'd be helpful if you and I go through a bunch of these common questions that parents run into and just like how we would answer them.
Yeah.
Right. A big reason for this is, again, to just try to help you emotionally as a parent to settle, right? Because like our listeners, right, it's just a lot of it is just about, right? Because conversations felt first.
Yep.
Right. And so like if you can just be like, oh yeah, this isn't a big deal, that really is going to help you if you can internally believe that.
Yeah. I know that sometimes like when I think a conversation's a big deal and then I have the conversation, I go, oh, that wasn't a big deal. So this is us having that conversation with you so that you can be like, oh, the answer to that question was not a big deal. And I don't need to be worried about it coming up and feel like you will know what to say in that moment.
A principle that you'll notice and that like you can apply in your own answering these questions is like you want to kind of be as short and succinct as possible. Just like try to answer the question as simply as you can, right? And then celebrate their desire to learn, their openness in asking you a question.
Yeah.
But we want to answer simply and celebrate. And that's the principle we're looking to practice.
Yeah. I've heard sometimes parents talk about this like, oh, I'm just going to answer what the kid asks. And I think that's a super important principle. But I also think that sometimes, especially when we're talking about sex and sexuality, where we have a little bit of baggage ourselves as parents, that sometimes we use that as an excuse to like, I'm only going to share the bare minimum information. And we definitely don't want to give that vibe to our kid that like, oh, I'm just answering the bare minimum. We want them to feel this like, oh, it's so great that you asked a question to learn and understand your body or about what you saw or whatever.
Yeah. So look for that principle as we go through this.
Cool. Go with the question.
Okay. Let's start by just I'll ask one of you these questions and you just give me an example of how you would answer it. The first one, let's go with just like, if a child comes up to you and asks like, how does the baby get in there?
Yeah, I think that like my first response would just be like, there's an egg cell and a sperm cell and they meet together and that allows a baby to grow inside a mom's body.
Yeah. Awesome. Right? Like that's just this very simple, here's a sentence. Great answer.
Yeah. Would you answer that any differently?
I would maybe say that like the sperm comes from dad and the egg comes from mom. right? I
Cool.
might even use the word fertilization. I might use the word sex, depends on the kid, but I would try to be one sentence like that,
Yeah.
right? Like, well, mom has an egg and dad has sperm. And when dad's sperm get into mom's uterus, like they meet and they meet via fertilization that starts to create a
Yeah.
baby,
Cool.
and then that baby grows,
Yeah.
right? And then I would let my kids sit there and process it. And then if they have more questions, awesome. If they don't, then I would then celebrate like, hey, thanks for asking. Like,
Yeah.
that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, like, what about the question, why does it take two people to make a baby? You kind of just answered that, actually.
Yeah. But I mean, I would say a very similar thing,
Yeah.
like, honestly, like, I believe that, like, the reason it takes two people is because, like, I think our God wants children to be raised in families with a mom and a dad.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate place. Like, honestly, like, it can work other ways.
Yeah.
But the ultimate way is to have a mom and a dad who are invested in each other.
Yeah.
And so, like, sex is a symbol of love, but it's also how you create children.
Oh, cool. I love that.
Right. And like, that's what I'm like, that's where my answer would be. And then again, I'd be like, yeah, thank you so much for asking. Right. Like, I kind of always want to end with that celebration.
Yep.
Anything you would do differently on that one?
Like maybe just a more like, that was an awesome way to like speak to the relationship. I love that. And then like on a more scientific level, I'd just be like, oh yeah, because a baby takes two, because a mom and a dad both have part of what is needed. They have a sperm cell or an egg cell, and they come together in that way.
I love that. One thing you'll realize as we go through these questions, like there's not a perfect way to answer them, but it's just like you want to be as simple and succinct as possible, which is hard. And so like to kind of prep it a little bit helps, but like it can be quite simple, right? Let's go. Another one I think is a great question is like, why is that baby under the blanket? Like when a mom is breastfeeding,
Yeah, such a cool time to be able to teach a kid like, oh yeah, moms' bodies are specially designed to feed and nurture a child. And so their breasts produce milk that comes out of the nipples when the babies suck on them. So like you've seen a baby drinking out of a bottle, the baby can actually drink from its mother's breast.
Yeah.
And get all the nutrition it needs from that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Like great way to, like it's another simple way. And like, again, as a parent, okay, how do you want to answer that question? You know, like, do you want to say like, look, a bottle is like a breast, right? Or do you want to say that like, breastfeeding is actually one of the few things that can actually support life. Yeah. Like you're talking breastfeeding and honey. And that's pretty much it, And like, just like the energy that you bring though is more important than the words you say. Right. Yeah.
I'd maybe even like as a mom talk about how breastfeeding was for me. Like I loved being able to breastfeed you when you were a baby.
Yeah. 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 I want to be like that too. I want to be a dad that says, I love that your mom breastfeeds. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Another question would be like, how does the baby get out?
That's a great question. Right. I think I would talk about a couple things. One, about timing, right? That like once a baby is grown and it's ready to exist on its own outside of its mom, the mom and the baby communicate with each other, and then the mom's uterus squeeze and pushes the baby out her vagina. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I would say. And then if a kid has more questions, right? Like, oh, really? Like, is it like poop? I was like, well, it's kind of like poop because it's flexing to get something out, but it doesn't come out of the same hole. Yeah. There's another hole that's in a woman's vulva called her vagina. And then another kid asks again, like, okay, does it hurt? And it's like, well, it is a big stretch for the body. And so it's a hard moment for mom, but like your body was built to do it. Like your body can totally do it. And I'm excited for you to have that happen one day. Yeah. If it was a daughter, which I think daughters, because I love that.
Daughters. That's such a good message to send. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do another one. This one I think is so funny. Why are they eating each other's faces? They see this video of people kissing, and it's like, okay, like why are they touching mouths or whatever? Yeah. And like I think kids often know like what a kiss is, but then when they see more of like a really strong, passionate make out version of that, they're like, wait a second, what are they doing? I'd probably just answer that question like, they are feeling really strong, passionate feelings for each other. And when we have those emotions and desires, we want to be as close as possible and connected to another person in that way. And I'm excited for you to have the desire to be close to someone like that as well. Yeah. I love this like principle that we keep hearing of like, I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
You know, like this is something we want for you one day.
Yeah.
You know, or I love also this like this is true for me and mom.
Yes.
Like mom and I do this, and this is like why we would. You know,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
like mom and I kiss like that sometimes, and like it's this expression of like I just want to be so close to you,
Yeah.
and like we are a unit.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Totally. Okay, another awesome question I want you to do. Oh, why is the dog doing that? Like if a dog especially is like humping,
Yeah.
right? Like I think that's
Yeah, so like we're really aware of that because we have a couple dogs, right? And we don't actually like castrate our dogs, and so like yeah, they'll hump their other dogs, they'll hump each other, like you know, and like there's a couple reasons that I would do it to explain it. Like one is I would say like, look, like honestly, dogs do that as a sign of dominance. Like I'm the dog that's in charge, and you're not.
yeah.
You know, I might say that like, oh, this dog thinks that like there's an opportunity to be sexual.
Yeah.
You know, if I didn't know the answer, right? Like I think not knowing the answer and still being excited to learn is awesome, right?
Okay, so
And I would,
like
yeah, like with my kid is like, okay, why is the dog doing that? I was like, wow, I don't know why
I
the
don't really
dog is
know.
doing that. Like
Yeah.
I don't really know how to explain it to you. Do you want to look it up with me?
Cool.
And then I would let that kid choose if they care enough to look it up. Like I wouldn't force a kid to do that.
Mhm.
But if a kid is like, oh yeah, let's learn, then like great, let's go look it up.
Yeah.
You know? But like I wouldn't force a kid into that lane.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love that example of like how as a parent you can show that it's fine if they ask you questions that you're not sure about. That
Yeah.
like you're okay with being a learner alongside them.
Totally.
That's an awesome.
And honestly, if there was a time where I felt a little fumbly, where I'm like, I don't know how I want to answer, like, okay, let's go with, it feels good to touch my vulva, right? Like, it feels good to touch my vulva. How come?
Yeah.
Right? Like, if I feel a little fumbly about answering that, like, I would be like, you know what? I'm not 100% sure how to explain that to you. Like, do you want to look it up with me?
Yeah.
You know? And I would go and look it up. Like, anything, if I felt a little fumbly, you can always kind of pass to that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Let's do what is this with like a tampon?
Okay.
Right? Let's imagine this is an older kid. So let's go like 7 to 9 year old ball range, and it's a girl.
Okay.
And she asks you like, okay, what is this? And it's a tampon.
And I would probably just, this isn't called a tampon. I would use the right terminology, right? This is a tampon, and I can use it inside my vagina. It goes up inside, and it like outside of the plastic part comes like a cotton mass that allows the blood from my period to be caught in that.
Yeah.
And then like I can just change that a few times a day, and that's how I manage when my body's on its period.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, if your kid doesn't know what a period is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you can still use the right terms. Right. And if the kid is like,
what is she
what's a
talking about?
period?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that's great. Awesome. Let him ask.
Yeah.
You know, like let him ask. And like, otherwise you'd be like, oh, I'm so grateful you asked me. Like, this is kind of a cool thing, you know, that like, it really makes my life more convenient.
Right.
You know,
probably one of those other things that I would maybe say as like a encouraging or celebrating the asking would be like, yeah, there's actually like other things that people use to catch their blood as well.
Yeah.
And so that's such a good question. And when you're ready to learn more, we could talk about that.
Yeah. Awesome. Right. And like, and again, it's okay to use terms your kids don't know. And if they want to know, they'll ask. Because a lot of times they're just like, oh, my mom's telling me it's fine. Like a lot of times it's just it. Like I think this thing is a little odd. Like it's not normal in my frame of reference, especially because it's sometimes if things are private, you know, and then they're like, this seems odd. I don't have one of these in my bathroom. And then you're like, oh, well, it's this. And if your energy is it's fine, they're going, oh, it's fine. And they don't really actually need a puberty lecture right then.
Right.
Right. They're just like, oh, okay, good. And it actually propels openness. Like even though you're not like letting them crack open the door and you're showing them all of puberty, you think like maybe that would fuel openness. That's not always true. Right. Like you want openness when they're ready a little bit for openness. Yeah. Right. And so that like, hey, this doesn't have to be this giant lecture. It can be this short answer, actually does propel openness in the future.
Yeah. I think too, like I've noticed in parenting, there are some times where I just feel as a parent like, oh, my child's wondering about that, but isn't asking me, you know, for whatever reason. And like, I have felt that like, oh, I'm going to open the door for that asking. So like if they're searching through like the glove compartment of the car, right? And they see the tampon and they regularly see it and they kind of are like, I don't know what this is. But then there's kind of this vibe of like, well, why don't I know what it is? Because I think at a certain
Yeah.
point, kids start to feel like, oh, if there's something I don't know about. Is there like a secret about this?
Or they feel
Or
embarrassed.
they feel embarrassed to ask. And so it can be a really great thing as a parent to just be like, oh, like I've noticed that you've seen like these tampons in
Yeah.
my bathroom and you've seen them in the glove compartment. I want to just make sure you know what those are.
Yeah.
So that you're not wondering
Yeah,
next time you
that's
see 'em.
awesome. Yeah, because you kind of see that happen in a kid where they're like, oh, what is this? You know?
Yeah.
And that's a great opportunity to just be like, oh, hey, this is what this is, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the same thing with breastfeeding, like for a youngest child that
Mm.
maybe doesn't see like siblings being breastfed.
Totally.
If they see it out in public and they may feel embarrassed to ask there, like that's another great opportunity to be like, oh, have you noticed that
Yeah.
moms oftentimes have a baby under the blanket or a mom has a baby close to them and has her breast out? This is what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that one. Right, especially with those, like, I think those are two big things that are
Mhm.
important to hit, you know? I wouldn't try to catch and interrupt every time my kid thinks,
Mm.
right, and is
Mhm.
wondering. Like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't try to set a pattern because, like, there really is some great future patterns that are set when a kid can ask,
Yeah.
right? But, like, some of those big ones, like, that's an awesome moment to interrupt and to be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
let me tell you about this." Or I would wait them out until their brain might think about something else, and then
And then go back to
later
it.
come back, like, in a moment that, like, the
Yeah.
drive home from an activity that you saw someone breastfeed,
Yeah.
right? Like, to actually catch that,
Yeah.
right?
Because I think we do this with other things in life. Like our kids ask us questions about other things in life, or we see them wondering about something and we do interrupt that and we do like insert like, hey,
Yeah.
you're observing this or noticing this.
Totally.
And I think if we can have that same attitude with sexual things and the functions of the body, then that is super positive.
Totally. I love that. Um, I don't know whose turn it is, but I'm gonna go. I'm gonna ask you another
Okay.
one. Let's say that let's say that someone you know is pregnant and they're like, how do they know the baby's gonna be a boy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Then I would just talk about like how you can actually get pictures of the baby with a machine called an ultrasound that uses sound waves to tell
Yeah.
what the baby looks like inside. And from there, you can either see a penis or you can see like the lines of the vulva.
Yeah.
And that's how you
That's how you know.
that's how you know.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Super simple. And then again, just it's like, yeah, thanks for asking.
Mhm.
You know?
And I think probably one of the most fundamental first questions that kids ask about bodies is like, why does dad have that? Or
Yeah.
like, where's mine? Or,
Yeah.
what's different between a boy and a girl,
Totally. Yeah, my 2-year-old recently, like I've been showering her with me, and like she asked me and pointed at my penis for like 3 weeks in a row, like, "Is this your vulva?" I'm like, "No, it's my penis. I'm a boy. I have a penis."
Mhm.
You know, "Is that your vulva? Is that your vulva?" I'm like, "No." And then now she comes out, she's like, "Oh, there's your penis," and I'm like, "Yep, there's my
Yeah.
penis."
Yeah.
You know, and
Cool.
it just like again, the energy you send there matters,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Like you can make it a normal thing.
Cool. All right, my turn to ask. How would you answer, let's say, like a prepubescent or like even puberty aged kid that's like, hey, why was your door locked?
Mm.
Maybe go with like a puberty age kid who like might get embarrassed when they find out like why, if
Yeah.
if it was like a sexual thing.
Yeah, honestly, like I would start with something just being very private. Now, if I'm looking for a way to enter like sex into their brain a little more often,
Mhm.
like I want my kids to believe that my wife and I are sexually into each other,
Yeah.
you know? And so if I'm looking for a way to work that in, like I might take this window.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I might just talk about, like sometimes like we do private things. And like when you go to the bathroom, you lock the door and shut
Yeah.
the door. Like it was just mom and dad were having some private time,
Yeah.
Because I don't want to send this message that every time the door is locked, we're being sexual.
We're having sex. Yeah.
But I do want to send like, look, we do private things, and this is one of like the things that we do, right?
Yeah.
Now, if it's a time, I'd be like, yeah, we do private things, and like sometimes we have like conversations that we don't want you guys to be part of yet because
Yeah.
we're not sure where we stand. Sometimes we're like, I don't know, we're like a little bit annoyed with each other, and we don't want to be interrupted,
Yeah.
right? And then sometimes it's like mom and I are having like a physically intimate and sexually intimate moment with each other,
Yeah. Cool.
and like we don't want you to join us in that,
Awesome.
And like I think sometimes as a dad, I watched my dad sometimes use sex to be a little bit like jokey, embarrassing,
Okay.
and that's something I want to avoid. Like I want to send that, like we were being sexually intimate when like I just said the kind of a joke of like, we don't want you to be part of it, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to say that with a joking tone. Like I would want to say just like, yeah, it's our private thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to send this like, moment,
Okay.
right? Because I don't want to use sex to embarrass.
Right.
Like I think that really is a danger with the pubescent kid in particular,
Especially
because they're
for
really
sure.
like, I mean, they're really unsure because they really like sometimes like probably 70% of their life they're not dealing with it. All of a sudden when they do, it's like raging.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like 70% of the time they're feeling like a young kid.
Totally.
Right. And then like the other, every once in a while they're like, whoa, there's this adult side of me that's coming out.
And it's beyond normal adult. It's like I am in heat adult. Right? Like it's coming with like it's normal. Then all of a sudden like whoo, and you're like, what? And this kid is like feels out of themselves is the truth. Yeah. And so I don't want to make that embarrassing. Like that's a very normal thing. Yeah.
I do love that idea of using it though to like give messages that you want to send, right? Like you can answer it simply with that, like, oh yeah, we just have times that we are having conversations or need private time together.
Yeah. Or again, we were having private time. Sometimes that's conversation. Sometimes that's so we can be
more
sexually intimate.
Yeah.
And like I love that. Like I think that that's so helpful to say that we can be sexually intimate. Like my kids are know and aware of that.
Yeah.
Is helpful.
It is so
helpful.
You
know, like and it's a sign of love. You know, I had a moment the other day that I wish I would have done differently. We were playing this video game, and we played this video game where you like create your own farm. Like it's our life dream to have a hobby farm, and so we love this like stupid video game that we create a hobby farm, right?
Okay.
And in this hobby farm, you also like can flirt with the townspeople, and like then eventually get married to them or whatever, right? And so. After all this time, my kids play it sometimes, I play it sometimes. We played this game and we've been flirting with this guy, and then eventually you get married. So then you get married in the game.
Okay.
And then you go to sleep for the next night, and you go to sleep, and in the morning it wakes up and there's like wiggling going on underneath the covers of this blanket and these hearts are coming out of it, you know? And as one of my daughters goes like, what is that? You know?
Yeah.
And I dismissed it. I just was like, I don't know. You know?
Oh, okay.
And I regret it with all of my heart that I regret that I said that, you know? And I wish I would have said, you know, like I wish my daughter knows what sex is. I would have been like, look, it's a symbol of them having sex.
Yeah.
Right? As like a symbol of their love and connection with each other. I like wish I would have said that with all my heart. To the point where I'm trying to figure out when the game does that because it's done it. I want it to do it again.
You need to go.
And I want to recreate that moment and do it better. You know?
Do you think she'll ask, or will you like
whether
if she
does
doesn't
or not,
ask, are you going to do it?
Yeah,
awesome.
Because I want that to change.
Cool.
You know? And so like I understand this like moment.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally.
But like if it doesn't go well, it's okay. Like it's coming back.
Yeah.
You know, like the ball's coming back to you. You can try again.
Totally.
You know, and like I think just deciding like, like I want to be an accurate sexual teacher, not a sexual dismisser.
Yeah.
Matters. You know, and again, I want parents to know, like we all feel this way. Like I talk about sex 40 to 50 hours every week.
Totally.
You know, and it still sometimes is like, I don't want to do this right now.
Yeah.
You know, and it's okay. You can try again.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
I always forget whose turn it is, so I'm gonna go now. Okay. Let's do. Ooh, I like this one. How come she's having a baby even though she's not married?
Oh,
that's a hard question.
But it's such a good question.
Great
right?
question.
Because kids like they're already forming these assumptions about creation, about procreation, and about families, and about how children are made, and they just assume that like marriage means a baby, right? And it's such a good opportunity to teach that like people can choose to have sex even when they're not married.
Totally.
And so a lot of people do. I would probably just say a lot of people choose to have sex even though they're not married.
Yeah.
And sometimes they get pregnant when they do.
That's awesome.
And I would leave it at that. And I would also probably add like, and we always celebrate that when a baby is coming.
Yeah.
Like I would want that to be
celebrate life.
Like, that the focus is on celebrating the life and not like wondering and moralizing over somebody else's sexual choices.
Totally. Like, especially when a kid is prepubescent, like they're not considering being sexual really anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and it isn't this time where you like need to hedge. Well, I don't want my daughter to ever do that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like you don't need to hedge that in this moment.
Nope.
You know, like you can just be like, yeah, like these people, her and someone else, they chose to be sexual with each other.
Yeah.
And like, and that can create a baby. And like, isn't that awesome? Like, it's so cool that she's going to have a baby.
Yeah.
You know? Right. And like, you can celebrate that.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can even celebrate, like we were more tied into one where like she was young and was going to adopt that baby out, you know? And like, I used one of these moments as an opportunity to teach my child that I think a mom choosing to sacrifice her body and then let someone else have that baby is an amazing, amazing sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so amazed by that. This woman actually was taken sexually. She was raped. And like, I wanted to celebrate her choice.
Yeah, her
to
choice.
celebrate her body to give that baby life. Like, I just think
Yeah.
that's awesome. Now, am I saying every person should do that? It's your choice. But like, I wanted to celebrate that.
You wanted to teach that value
Yeah.
that you hold.
Yeah, and which is these are a great time if you can in one sentence throw in your value, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And especially a positive value. Again, like we're not
Yeah.
trying to put in a value judgment, a negative value judgment on somebody, I don't think, when
yeah.
when a kid is processing what this means.
Yeah, I wouldn't try to
moment.
stop a behavior in that moment. Like, if you want to celebrate a behavior, awesome. But I would not try to prevent a behavior in that moment. Yeah.
Okay. Another question. Why does my penis get hard?
Yeah, great question. I think when the kid asks me matters,
Okay.
right? If it's like a I woke up thing, like I would be answering with like, actually your body is trying to clean that part of your body with its blood. And so it actually brings blood flow into the penis and out of the penis at night to make sure that it cleans it. Right.
What
And
would
it
you
happens
say if the
multiple
kid
times.
follows up with like why doesn't other parts of my body do that?
Yeah, the other parts of your body always have enough blood flow in them to make it happen.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah, and like that's not really true with your penis or your clitoris as a woman.
Yeah.
Or your like your labia as a woman. Like, they need more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Then if this kid asks me this question and like they're in the back of the car and they've been like self-touching, I would say that like, look, like our body has like nerve endings and our penis is a place where there are a lot of those.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's stimulating for it to be touched and then your blood rushes to that. Similar, like if you rubbed your arm for a little bit, it would turn reddish. Right.
Yeah.
If you like rub your arm, or even your hands together, you'll see them get red.
Blood comes
right.
to
And your
that
blood
place.
comes to the surface. Right. And it's the same. Like your blood is just coming to the surface in your penis.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And then again, I'd be like, yeah, thanks for asking. Like I want to celebrate. Ask.
Okay, one more question maybe that parents often will get when a child sees an adult body and they notice like, oh, there's pubic hair, right? And ask that question like, why do you have hair there?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. Honestly, this is a great one if you don't know to like, hey, I don't know. Like, let's do some research about why we have hair there, Honestly, like, I don't know exactly why we have hair there, And so like my answer would be like, like as you mature and become adult, your body will start to grow hair there too.
Just
And
like
so,
as simple as
men
that.
and women both grow hair right here in this area, their pubic area.
Yeah.
And then and maybe I would say if my kid still had the question faced, maybe I'd be like, and I don't know why, or I would be like, okay, and then a lot of times that'll settle it. Honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
I think it's helpful to review some principles here. Like, one, as a parent, like, take a breath, slow down. Like, you even felt this with us. Like, there's kind of this, like, okay, the car's getting rolling. Okay, now we're rolling.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's okay. Like, your kid doesn't expect you to have this perfect answer right off the bat.
Right.
They're looking for, again, energy and, like, how you feel. And is these things okay, especially when they're young? And then older, they might have some conceptual questions.
Right.
I think the next thing is try to answer simply with positive energy, right? And like celebrate your values that you believe, celebrate behavior, celebrate creation.
Yeah.
Like be a celebrator.
And in that tone, like we're avoiding like prevention.
Yeah.
Type of teaching.
Because prevention, like it's just so unnecessary in learning. Like we don't want to prevent learning.
Right.
These questions are learning based. They're not behavior based. They're learning based. And like preventing learning actually causes more behavioral issues in the future.
For sure.
Right. And so like the last thing we want to do is prevent learning.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think finally, like celebrate their openness, And honestly, you can almost always say the same thing. Hey, thanks so much for asking me. That's a great question.
Yeah.
Or I love that we have conversations like this, or I love that you're a learner and you try to figure things out.
Yeah. I'm so excited to answer that question for you.
Yeah. That's awesome. Right. And like, I think if you end on that positive note, when the kid reprocesses it, because the conversation stops, then they rethink it through. Like we all do, we have conversations and we think like, I wish I would have said this or whatever.
Right.
Like your kid is doing that. And like it ended with that positive energy. So that is now linked to the answer.
Right. And it leaves that door open that we want for them to feel like this was a good learning experience. And this was like, this is a topic that I can ask more questions about.
Exactly. Perpetuate openness.